Hi class, this is Dr. Karsten, and today I'm going to go over problems that I like to call how many different ways problems. So we've seen a lot of these problems recently. In fact, today when we were practicing math, we saw some in problem number 3. So these problems are often asking you to place things in rows or groups or stacks. So for example, I could have a bunch of books and I want to figure out how many different ways I could stack those books. Or maybe I had a bunch of toy cars and I wanted to know how many different ways I could line up those toy cars in groups. Or maybe I want to put flowers in bunches in vases, and I want to know how many different ways could I put those flowers in different vases. So those are some examples of the types of problems that we've seen before. So for us today, I'm going to be using candy because it is so much more delicious. So much easier to work with than anything else that I could think of right now. So let's start with the pieces of candy that you see here. And if I just wanted to really quickly count them, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I just want 12, so we're going to take 1 out. So I only have 12. I had 13. That one's going to be very delicious that I just took out. And now, what we need to think about is how are we going to organize these? What would the question be asking us? The typical question would be asking us, how many different ways can we organize this candy? And we're going to say for our problem, how many different ways can we line up this candy into rows? So just remember, rows go from left to right, they go side to side. So for example, these words are in a row. Columns would go up and down. So let's take a look at this and let's just try it. Let's see how many different ways could we line up these candies in rows. So I don't know, a nice easy one I think to start with would be, could we set these up in 2 different rows? Could I put these in 2 rows? Now remember, we want to get even rows, an even number of candies in each row. So let's go ahead and let's do this. I'm going to put 1 there and 1 there. And a great way to do this is to go ahead and just keep adding 1 to each of the rows that you're making, or the groups. Sometimes we make little cups to put them in. So let's see, this was 12 candies, and you can see I'm lining them up. Each candy has a partner, and look at that, I was able to line those up into 2 rows of 6 candies. Do you guys see that? There's 2 rows. So here we have 1 row, and here we have another row, and each row has 6 candies. So I just want to kind of keep track of this. So I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write 2 rows of 6 candies. And I should write candies there. I'm just running out of room. Okay, so 2 rows of 6 candies. So that's one way that I could do it. Let's try another way. So let's mix them all up again. And let's try 3 rows and see what happens. So I'm going to start my 3 rows. So those are going to be my 3 rows, and let's see what happens. So I'm just going to keep putting, and let me just try and keep them even, the candies into the rows. So there we go. Each row has 3. Now each row has 4. And look at that, it worked. I have 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, oops, and each row has 4 candies. So let me jot that down. I have 3 rows of 4 candies. Now another way to think about that is to say that I either have 3 rows of 4, or another way to think about that is that I have 4 3 times, because I have 4 1 time, 4 2 times, 4 3 times. But I don't notice if you notice that I wanted to say also that I have 4 3 times. I have 3 4 times, because I could even look at my columns. Because I could just go ahead and take my paper and just kind of flip it. And I could twist it this way, and now I suddenly have 4 rows, and each row has 3 candies. So now I have 4 rows of 3. Isn't that cool? And that has to do with that whole commutative property. But let's just stick with what we're doing. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. I'm going to turn it into my 4 rows. So now you see I have 4 because we want rows right now. Even though rows and columns are similar, we're going to go with the rows. So here I have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4 rows. So this time I have 4 rows, and each row has 3 candies. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to jot that. So now I have 4 rows of 3 candies. But you know, I feel like I could very easily make a mistake if I just kind of keep doing this, you know, because I'm just kind of grabbing ideas. I'm not really being organized. And I could find a whole bunch more ways, but I might miss one if I'm not doing this in an organized way. And what we are really simply trying to do is find factors of 12. Now, let's try one more before I'm going to show you a nice organized way of doing this. So let's try maybe rows. Let's try 5 rows. Let's see what happens. So let me mix these up, and let's make 5 rows. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's 5 rows, and let's see if that works out. So I'm going to put another one in each row. So now each row is going to have 2 candies in it. And now I'm going to put my last 2 candies. Now you see, I used up all my candy. I used up all 12, 5, 10, 11, 12. I used up all 12 pieces of candy, but my rows are not even. Look here. Here I have 3 candies in this first row. I have 3 candies in my second row, but then my third row only has 2, and my fourth row only has 2, and my fifth row only has 2 candies, and that's a problem. That means that I didn't do a good job, because your rows have to be even. They have to be equal. They have to have the same number of candies, or else it didn't work. So that is not a way. 5 will not work. There's no way I could make 5 work. All right, so now, again, I'm just kind of grabbing numbers. I could be missing a lot of numbers. Remember, I'm trying to organize 12 candies into rows, and I want to find all the different ways that I could do that. So if I want to be super duper organized, a really great way of doing that is to simply do factor pairs. So watch this. I'm going to do 12 because that's the number that I'm working with. And I want to try and think of all the different ways I could line up 12 candies into equal rows. So here's the thing. I know that I could always do 1 row. And that's because I know that 1 times 12 is a factor pair. What does that mean? 1 times 12 multiplies out to 12, or 12 is a product of those. So these are a factor pair of 12. So I know that that will always work. And let's just really quickly prove it. Let's do 1 row of 12 candies. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take all our candies and put them in one quick row. And there you have it. 1 row, 1 not very neat row of 12 candies. All right, so that we just proved that. So now the question is, what should I try next? Well, what I always recommend is try the number 2, see if it works. Is there a number that you know that 2 times that number is equal to 12? If you don't know, go ahead and take your candies and let's split them up into 2 rows and let's see what we get. And we did it before here. We had 2 rows of 6 candies. So let's just remind ourselves. I'm going to go ahead. Remember, you have to line up. Everyone has to have a buddy or a partner. See? It's almost like they're going on a little field trip. A field trip to my belly, but not until we're done. All right, so there we go. They're all lined up, and I have 2 rows of 2 rows of 6. So now what I know is that 2 times 6 is 12, and that works. So now what I want to do is I want to see if the number 3 works. So I would try 3, and I'm going to see if I can do 3 rows. And we did it before. We had 3 rows of 4. So I happen to know that it is going to work, but just to show it to you again, I have 3 rows of 4 right there. So 3 rows of 4, or 3 times 4, or again 4 times 3. And that's equal to 12. And now remember we figured out that 4 rows of 3 worked before. So I can write that down too, because 4 times 3 is also 12. So again, I'm just looking for numbers that multiply to 12, but I'm being organized. I'm going in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we tried 5, and 5 did not work. Do you remember that I tried to make them into rows, into 5 rows, and it did not work one bit? because it was uneven. Remember? There's 5 rows, but look, 2 of the rows have 3 candies and the other ones have 2. 5 does not work. I can't put it down. What number comes after 5? 6. Look, we're just going in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try 6. Is there a number that you can multiply 6 times to equal 12? Can you think of one? Hint, it's already there. We already wrote it. Once you get a repeat like this, where you see a number in this column that's already in this column, just like this 4 was already a good tip that's happening, you basically have found all of them and you're just doing repeats now. And it would be 4 times 6 is another way that I could do this. All right, well, we know I could try 7. I'm telling you it won't work because once I have a repeat, it means that I'm just going up this column now. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12. It's just repeating itself. If that doesn't make sense, though, right now, keep going. Try 7. Could I do 7? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is 7 going to work? Yeah. Oh, what do I have here? This should be a 2, my friends. Oh my goodness. It's way too late for this. 1, 2, 3. So this would be 6 rows of 2. But now we're trying 7. And 7 does not work. And 8 doesn't work. And 9 doesn't work. And I'm running out of room, my friend. And 10 doesn't work. And 11 doesn't work. And I'm going to have to turn these sideways. So I'm going to do columns instead of rows just so that you guys can see this. All right, so this is 11, and 11 doesn't work because you can see all these columns, we're doing columns now, have 1, and that one has 2. But I could do 12 rows, and 12 rows, and each row having 1 candy would definitely work. So I'm going to go ahead and write that. So I could do 12 rows of a single candy in each row because 12 times 1 equals 12. And those are all the possible ways that I could do 12 candies in rows. So now if I wanted to write this, what I would have to do is I would have to write these in a very specific way. I would have to say 1 row of 12 candies because I'm making rows of candies. So 1 row of 12 candy. And then I'd have to do 2 rows of 6 candies. And then I'd have to do 3 rows of 4 candies. And then I'd have to do 4 rows of 3 candies. And I'm just going to jot these in because you don't need to watch me writing all this. And 6 rows of 2 candies and 12 rows, oops, and I'm running out of space, of 1 candy. Right? So those are all the ways we could do this one. Let's do one more example, just to make sure that you really get this. So let me grab us a new piece of paper, and again, we're doing how many different ways, and we're trying to find all the ways that you could do this. So here we go. So we know we have 12 candies here. Let's add some more. I don't want to add too many more, but that's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Ooh, that one needs to stay. All right, so now I have 20 candies. Ooh, we're going to flip that one over. There we go. Okay, so I have my 20 candies. And again, I want to find all the different ways that I could line these up. So let's do both. Let's be organized and let's also work it over here. And here we could even just put them into groups. I mean, we could pretend that these are, I don't know, strawberries or candy and put it into groups. So we don't even have to do rows, but for now, let's be organized and do our rows. So again, we're starting now with 20 candies, and we want to figure out all the possible ways we could do it. Let's start with 1. Could I put them in 1 long row? Of course I can. I could do that. They're not all going to fit here, but I could definitely put them in 1 long row because it would just be 1 row of 20 candies. So I'm going to do my best. They're not all going to fit in the frame, but I'm still trying to do my best. Well, maybe these will. Let's see. So here we go. Oh, they just barely are not fitting. Ooh, maybe I got them. You can kind of see this guy. So it's one very messy row of 20 candies. Otherwise, it's not going to fit. So what I can say is that 1 times 20, or one row of 20 candies, is equal to 20. So again, now what number do we try next? Well, we've tried 1, so now we want to try 2. And you could even write like 3, 4, 5, and see if all those work. So you could put 3, 4, and the goal is, are there numbers you could multiply these by that are going to give you 20? And let's just keep going. Let's do the first few by hand like this. So let's try 2. Could we do 2 rows? Let's try. Let me try and line these up into 2 rows. I'm trying to do it a little more quickly. Trying to match them up the best I can. And look at that. I have 2 equal or even rows. Everyone has a buddy for their trip. All right, so here we go. So now we have 2 rows. Here's one row and here's another row. And each row has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you know what? 2 times 10 is 20. That one totally worked. I like it. All right, so now let's test out 3 because that's the next number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try 3 and see if it works. And again, another way to think about this is that I'm dividing these into groups of 3. All right, so let's see what happens. So you see I'm making 3 rows. Oh, so far it looks good. That looks nice. Let's add our last 2 in, and it didn't work. It's uneven. It didn't work. I cannot evenly place these in rows of 3. 3 rows. Look. 1, 2, 3. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one has 7, but this one only has 6. It didn't work. 3 is not going to work for 20. 3 is not a factor of 20. What about 4? Let's try out 4. So now we need to make 4 rows. So I have 1 row, 2 row, 3 rows, 4, and let me see if I can get them nice and even. Whoa, check that out. It worked. I have 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, and each row has 5 candies in it. So I have 4 rows of 5 candies. And you know what? 4 times 5 is equal to 20. So now let's keep going again. So we did 1, we tried 2, 3 didn't work, we did 4. Let me ask you, is there some number that 5 times that number is going to give you 20? There sure is. We just did it. 4 times 5. So we can just put 4 there. And just see how now I have a repeat. I have this 5 that was already written here. So now what I know is that I can just go backwards. I can do 10 times 2 and 20 times 1. But let's just kind of work our way through it anyway. Even though I already know I can do that, let's work our way through it. So I would have 5 times 4. Does 6 work? Nope. There's 6 times nothing will give me 20. 7 times nothing will give me 20 also. There's no number I can multiply 7 by to get 20. 7's not a factor of 20. 8, is there a number I can multiply 8 times? I'm going to skip count. Let me think. I have 8, I have 16, I have 24. There's no 20 there. 8 does not work. 9 doesn't work either. But when I get to 10, is there a number that I can multiply 10 times to get 20? Look up here. 2 times 10, which means that 10 times 2 will also work. And again, once I got these double numbers going here, I knew that I was just going back up. So 11 doesn't work, 12 doesn't work, 13 doesn't work, 14 doesn't work. Can you guys guess what the next number is going to be since I just did 10? It's going to be 20. No other numbers will work between 10 and 20. The next one that works is 20, and it's going to be 20 times 1. And that would work. And now again, I need to know, how do I write these? So let's think. We could be doing groups of candies, because now I have to write each of these down. I have to explain it. So I could say 1 group of 20 candies, 2 groups of 10 candies. Or let's say I'm stacking books on bookshelves. I could say 4 stacks of 5 books, right? Or 5 stacks of 4 books, 10 stacks of 2 books. That's how we phrase it. Or remember the rows of cars, we could do that. Or we could do vases again of flowers. So we could say, for example, 2 vases of 10 flowers, or 10 vases of 2 flowers. Can you imagine that? 10 vases of 2 flowers? I could even draw that. I could draw myself a whole bunch of vases and put 2 flowers in each, but that would take a whole lot of time if I wanted to draw that. I think it's much easier if you can just use your factors like this, and you can find your factor pairs. Factors of 20 that multiply to 20 factor pairs. All right, I hope that this was useful to you. I hope that this will help you out, because I know a lot of you are still struggling with these how many different ways or all the different ways. Whenever you hear that you're trying to make different groups, this is what you're going to do. You're going to find the factor pairs of a number. All right, have a great evening, and I will see you in our Google Classroom.